Welcome to the Savage Nation. Today we're going to talk about Islamofascism. Not fashionable today, but well understood in intelligence communities. The Egyptians, the attack by the Egyptian last week upon innocent civilians in Boulder, Colorado, did not come out of the blue. No, it came from the teachings that he learned since he was a boy. It's fundamentalist Islamic teachings that motivated this Egyptian terrorist. And unless the FBI goes into his mosque and interviews his imam and reviews the tapes of the preachings of the imam over the years, this will all be forgotten and swept under the rug. The fact of the matter is, everybody knew it was a terrorist attack almost immediately, except the police chief of Boulder, who was so politically castrated that he kept repeating the big lie that he didn't know the motivation. To the FBI's credit, they immediately knew the motivation because the Egyptian himself said what the motivation was. He said he wished he could have killed them all. The hatred of Jews and Christians by Muslims goes back thousands of years. Let's be clear. Long before Israel existed, the Islamists were preaching, kill the Jew, kill the Christian, kill the infidel. And this Egyptian is only the latest in a long series of burnings, knifings, shootings, stonings, driving into crowds by these 13th century fundamentalist Muslims. Just look at Europe. What happened in Boulder was not an isolated incident. It's part of a long chain of attacks by radical Muslims. And now we have the Red-Green Alliance, which is promulgated by the dogs of hate on the left, cheering on the so-called anti-Zionist Palestinians in their cause, which is to bring down Western civilization. Years ago, I wrote a book called Liberalism is a Mental Disorder, 2005. And there's a chapter in there called Unmasking Islamofascism, which I'd like to read portions of for you today on the Savage Nation. John Europe hit the dirt face down, hands twisted and bound behind his back. Towering over him, a robed, hooded man barked orders in a foreign tongue. Salty droplets of sweat fell from his executioner's coarse beard, stinging John's face as his head was yanked skyward. John caught sight of the sun as the scimitar whistled toward his pale, outstretched neck. Less than a few seconds remained before the cold, hardened steel severed John's racing heart from his head. He strained, but could not remember the name of his father's God. In a flash of memory, all he could think of was a line from Charles Dickens' A Tale of Two Cities. As a child, John had smuggled the contraband tome from a smoldering burn pile in front of his public school. Even now he clung to the forbidden words. It is a far, far better rest that I go to than I have ever known. A sudden shriek of praises to Allah by his executioner squelched the memory. For a pitiful moment, John screamed for mercy. His agonizing appeal for grace competed with the barbaric praises of his captor, creating an unholy cacophony of sound. With the force of a lightning bolt, the blade crashed against his flesh. The hot steel found its mark. John's final wail lingered in the air as his lifeless form covered. His wife, Jane Europe, fought back a flood of tears as the hooded barbarian dangled John's bloodied head high above the cheering mob. And while deeply distressed by her husband's execution at the hand of the new Islamic Purity Squad, she knew she must remain silent or suffer the same fate. Even now, the Islamic folks ruling her continent were trying to convince her they were not that bad. The mullahs, after all, were gracious enough to permit her to collect her husband's head and torso and to bury them in a cemetery without crosses. Welcome to the United Islamic State of Europe, year 2075. Now, I wrote this in 2005. Was I wrong? Was I paranoid and delusional? Ask Europeans if I was. Guess again. If you dare to face the savage truth, guess again. The Red-Green Alliance is trying to foment the overthrow of Western civilization in order to see their Bolshevik dreams come true. You see, radical Islam, my friends, is not so much a religion as it is a political movement with global aspirations. Its leadership masquerades in holy robes while carrying the Quran in one hand and an AK in the other. Their goal? Simple: to convert you or kill you. That's all. Nothing short of total victory will do for the Islamists. And with 1/5 of the Earth's population subscribing to Islam, the radical fringe is working overtime to infiltrate the rest, break our will, and drag the world back to the 13th century. It's not about Zionism. It's about conquest, fool. Forget what you've been told by the enlightened ones on the left, that Islam is a religion of peace. It's all garbage. What the libs really mean is that Islam is a religion of pieces, since the extremist followers of Muhammad maim, behead, and destroy all who refuse to bend the knee to Allah. Don't take my word for it. Read the Quran for itself. Read for yourself. Here's a real sapphire of a religious proverb found in the Quran. It may embarrass you, but here it is. Quote, I will cast terror into the hearts of those who disbelieve. Therefore, strike off their heads and strike off every fingertip of them. Quran 8:12. How do you like that one? Does the name Nicholas Berg come to mind? Do you remember Daniel Pearl? Do you remember Paul Johnson, Kim Sun II, Eugene Armstrong, Raja Azad, Sajad Naim? You don't remember them. They were decapitated, every last one of them. These Islamic head cutters and headscarves are so warped, they consider beheadings nothing more than a Kodak moment to share with friends, followers, and foes alike. They get their iPhones rolling, read some rambling message of how radical Islam should rule the world, and then these insects saw off the heads of their victims with short knives. Why? Well, let Muhammad himself field that answer for you. Quote, so when you meet in battle those who disbelieve, then smite the necks until when you have overcome them. And for those who are slain in the way of Allah, he will by no means allow their deeds to perish. Quran 47:4. In other words, beheadings are just part of the Islamic outreach program. They go hand in knife with following the will of Allah and the spread of radical Islam. Nothing more. And the liberals want us to believe this is just a religious preference, something we in the West should try to understand. Not me. I say if Islam is such a peaceful religion, maybe they should begin by lightening up on murdering the people with whom they disagree, as in Boulder, Colorado. Don't think for 1 minute this jihad is just the police. Don't think for 1 minute that this jihad you are witnessing here in America, the two individuals inside the Jewish Museum, you forgot them already. Boulder, Colorado, already swept under the rug by the sports fanatics. The European stabbings, beheadings, burnings, and rapes, you forgot them all, right? The jihad that Muhammad called for is nothing short of world terrorism. Read the evidence for yourself. Allah's apostle said, I have been made victorious with terror. Bukhari, Volume 4, Book 52. And Allah's apostle said, killing disbelievers is a small matter to us. It's all in their holy books. To these enemies of civility, it's perfectly fine to sacrifice human life if it serves the cause of making their version of Islam the dominant religion in the world. What's more, 72 burqa-free virgins await them on the other side should they die in the service of Allah. Wake up and smell the dirty bombs. The march of radical Islam is the most dangerous threat to America and the rest of the civilized world. Just ask the Europeans. They must be stopped. Islam is growing so rapidly within Europe that the historian Bernard Lewis said at the time, 20 years ago, that Europe is becoming part of the Arabic West. He said that 25 years ago. The continent will essentially be annexed by Islam. and not too far down the road either. Believe me, he was right. Lewis told the German newspaper, Die Welt, that Europe will be Islamic by the end of the century. And they laughed at him and they called him a racist. Of course, the Islamification of Europe could come sooner as well. Much sooner if the broken record leftists don't stop chanting, "Give peace a chance," between their yoga lessons. And don't for 1 second think that the Islamists will be happy just snapping the crosses off every sacred structure in Europe. And America is next, as I warned you 25 years ago, and through one book after another. As the West confronts Islamic terrorism, there's one fact we forget to our mortal peril. These subhumans would just as quickly slit your throat as look at you. I suggest you read that again. I realize this harsh reality might be hard for you to comprehend, especially if you're a product of American public school education, where sensitivity toward Islamic terrorists is taught in first period, right after the principal conducts Ramadan prayers with a bullhorn by the United Nations flag array in the parking lot. This does not change the nature of these barbarians. What's more, their brand of hatred and intolerance is nothing new. Islamic terrorism has been around for thousands of years, as you will see in a minute on the Savage Nation. So let's drop all the cant and spin about how Islam is a religion of peace. I don't buy it for 1 second, nor should you. That is if you care about your survival. I wrote that in 2005, and of course I was 100% right. And of course, ask all of the Muslims in America and the world who've been trying to reform Islam where they've gotten so far. Nowhere. And that's because the reformists in Islam are generally killed before they can bring about a reformation. They've been preaching kill the Jew, kill the Christian, kill the infidel from the beginning. It's fundamentalist Islamic teaching that motivated this Egyptian. It was fundamentalist Islamic teaching combined with Marxist teaching that motivated Mr. Rodriguez, who killed those 2 innocent Israeli people outside of the Jewish Museum. As the young girl, 26 years old, was shot several times and still tried to crawl away for safety, he executed her. Where is that story? It's gone with the wind because the executioner was Hispanic, not a white male from the mountains of Montana. And the victims were not blacks, you see. The victims were not really victims to the radicals in the media. And that's all I have to say at this time. There's a lot more that can be said. There's a lot more you could read about this. But I think America is so far gone that the words I have just read to you and have spoken to you about will be seen as too violent for the average person. The fact is, Muslims have had a long, dark tradition of relentless violence committed against so-called infidels. It's a fact of history, not taught in our schools. But you don't know that, do you? You're probably one of the sheeple who spent more time in high school history class thinking about your girlfriend's cup size than the lesson, which is not to say that your teacher would have been all that truthful about Islam's violent past. Had you been listening, it won't be taught. Just to be clear, an infidel is anyone who doesn't believe in Islam. That's you. Again, the goal of radical Islam is to convert you or kill you, period. Hard to believe that? Tell that to 19-year-old Javad Anjum, who suffered electric shocks to various body parts, a fractured arm, smashed fingers, lacerations all over his body, and did I mention his nails have been pulled out? His crime? In April of 2004, Javad, a university student in Pakistan, was traveling to his grandfather's house when he got thirsty. He saw an outside water tap and took a drink. When confronted, he made the mistake of mentioning that he was a Christian to several Muslim seminary students who had accused him of stealing. The Muslims immediately dragged Javad into their seminary, where they tried to convince him through 5 days of torture to renounce his faith of Christianity and embrace Islam, the religion of peace. Evidently, Javad didn't feel the love. After they were done torturing Javad, they dumped him off at the police station, charging him with theft. The police in Pakistan at the time, seeing his many wounds and contusions, permitted his family to take him to the hospital. And Javad died there from 2 failed kidneys shortly after making a statement about the way he had been tortured. Get this, no police action was taken against the Muslim torture squad in Pakistan. What's more, there's more to come. The chief constable in charge of this miscarriage of justice said it was God's will for Javad to die as he did. There are many such instances in Europe right now, one after the other. You probably have all forgotten the 1993 attack on the World Trade Center, which was conducted by radical Islamists. It's not taught in our schools anymore. I'm not surprised that most of you don't know what I'm talking about. And that's because the left and the media elite in America have given radical Islam a pass, because they know that radical Islam is part of the terrorism that they are using to break Western civilization and capitalism. I hope you wake up before it's too late. The fact of the matter is, maybe your socialist sociology professor from Harvard doesn't even know these facts. Maybe he doesn't even know that Islam is not a religion of peace. But if you study the history of Islam, as I have done for many a decade, you will find that Christianity spread quickly, and so did Islam. But unlike Christianity, Islam spread through violent conquest, not through peaceful teachings like Christianity. Islam spread through swords, not sacraments. Islam spread with pillaging, not preaching. Islam spread so quickly that within a century of its birth, vast swaths of the known world were bowing toward Mecca 5 times daily. In the year 632, Jerusalem fell to the sword of Muslim armies, not through teachings of peace, but through terror. Alexandria fell in 642. Carthage fell in 670. Spain fell in 711. Followers of Islam continued to annex whole nations and entire religions and regions, bringing millions of people under their control. They were finally stymied by Christian crusaders in the Middle Ages. And though it still took hundreds of years before the last major Islamic government, the Ottoman Empire, was defeated in World War I by the West. Okay, did you know that? That's what did it. That's what did it. But that didn't end Islamic conquest. Its followers are doing as much now, if not more, to spread Islam anew to regions which were in earlier times under its iron grip. Did you know that there were Spanish regions that were conquered? Did you know that Spain was conquered at one point? While the Spanish knights, during the glory days of Spain, drove the Islamofascists out, today's inherited class of Spanish weaklings are too busy in the discotheques at night and too busy taking ecstasy to stand up and fight for their homeland. We're seeing the same lack of resolve in America. So why am I rehashing this history? Because we in the West are reliving it. Granted, it's a more subtle and insidious onslaught right now, but an onslaught nonetheless, one that might ultimately prove more lethal. Maybe you don't know that, maybe you do. The problem is that you probably hate history. You don't know the difference between Genghis Khan, Chaka Khan, and Maya Khan. As the great philosopher Georges Santayana has said, those who do not know history are condemned to repeat it. Look, I understand nobody teaches real history in school these days, but being ignorant of our crisis doesn't change the fact that we are in a current crisis. Radical Islam is in America, and radical Islam is using Zionism as an excuse to conquer the West. Listen to Winston Churchill, the political statesman who exposed communism's threat to the West. In his analysis, he said, Islam, quote, which above all others was founded and propagated by the sword, the tenets and principles of which are incentives to slaughter and which in 3 continents had produced fighting breeds of men, stimulates a wild and merciless fanaticism. You tell me this is a religion of peace? Every single major terrorist attack against the United States has been committed by radical Muslims. Every single major terrorist attack against the United States has been committed by radical Muslims, not Christians, not Jews, not Buddhists, not Jehovah's Witnesses, not Hindus, not Mormons, not New Agers or Jains. Am I the only guy who sees this? Now, I realize some of you may point to Timothy McVeigh's Oklahoma City bombing as an example of Christian terrorism on American soil. They couldn't be more wrong. McVeigh was not a Christian. That's number one. In fact, the opposite is true. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution reported that McVeigh was a, quote, an avowed agnostic. An avowed agnostic. His entire life up until the last hour before his execution, when he requested to see a Catholic priest, was that of agnosticism. This last act of a dead man walking surprised everyone who knew him. And so, my friends, there are really no Christian terrorists out there. It's been assigned by MSNBC, CNN, and of course, the Democrat Party. But as we could see in Boulder, and we saw in Washington, D.C. not too long ago, they were not Christians who conducted the terror, were they? The left-wing press is in overdrive trying to sweep these killings under the rug and to blame anyone, but in this case, the Egyptian fanatic who was Islamic, who did this in Boulder. Like a hot lava flow, this insidious death culture has dozed across the globe, consuming one city, one community, one region at a time. You may be wondering how the surge of a fundamentalist Islam matters to you. I'll tell you, think for a moment about your cherished freedom of expression. Think about your freedom of religion. Think about your freedom of speech. Think of your freedom of the written word. Think of your freedoms, period. Now release them. You see, Islam is about submission and control, not freedom. Islam doesn't mean peace, it means submission. They fear freedom. In fact, I'll say it, the word Islam means submission, not peace. Unlike the radical belief held by our founding fathers that all men are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, these throwbacks maintain the notion that women must be bound up in a burqa and their faces covered. What ought to seize our attention is the steady pace and relentless push of Islam, radical or otherwise, around the world. Like a hot lava flow, this insidious death culture has oozed across the globe, consuming one city, one community, one region at a time. Muslim radicals are on the march, from France to Spain to Denmark to Sweden to Norway. Ask them. Muslim centers are expanding in both political and cultural influence. In virtually every case, the more these Islamic communities spread, the more friction is sparked with surrounding Western cultures. They have migrated throughout the European continent in the past several decades and are slowly entrenching themselves. In most stations of their sojourn, they are not yet the top dogs, but take a look at the blonde bellwether in Scandinavia to see where things are headed. Increasingly, it's bye-bye Vikings, hello Wahhabis. I can give you one example after another about the alarming developments around the world, whether it's in Denmark or Sweden or Norway. And there were those who tried to warn those in these countries, but they were called racists and Islamophobes, just as here in America. Where is the outcry from the peace-loving, moderate mullahs when fellow Muslims murder children in cold blood? Nowhere to be seen. And so, my friends, I would like to tell you that here in America, we are not immune. As we have seen in Boulder, and we have seen in other places, a message of moderation, not extremism, must now prevail in the Islamic world. We need an army of moderate Muslims crying out, not in our name. Have you heard any yet? There are a few and far between. I've interviewed them over the years, a few here and a few there, but not too many because they're usually killed before they can get their message out. Here's a quote from a Muslim named Al-Rashed, who said, "It's a certain fact that not all Muslims are terrorists, but it is equally certain and exceptionally painful that almost all terrorists are Muslims." It's true then, and it's true now. And there was a time before Biden when there were entire divisions within police departments in this country monitoring mosques in this country, all thrown out when Obama came to power, because Obama himself, in my opinion, was the head of a gigantic sleeper cell. That's how I said it. That's how I saw it. That's what I wrote about, one book after another. I made some inroads, long forgotten by now. But here we are again in our year of 2025, 2025, and once again we're facing the ugly face of Islamic terror right here in the United States of America. That's all I have to say. That's my monologue for today. If you care to comment, we are available for your comments briefly, maybe for 5 minutes or so. I'll take some comments or questions. And if not, I will go on. If you're watching me on YouTube, please subscribe and hit the like button. And watch what goes on in Boulder. Watch what Wolf Blitzer does. Watch what MSNBC does. Watch how Fox itself will sweep it under the rug. Watch. Just watch. Just watch. Just as they swept the killing of those two young people in Washington, D.C., outside the Jewish Museum under the rug, they're going to sweep this Egyptian murderer and burner under the rug. You wait and see. You wait and see. That's all I want to say. I have nothing more to add to my own words. I wrote this 25 years ago. I've been at this a long time, and frankly, I'm weary. And others have picked up the baton and are doing a very good job. In fact, I know that a lot of young men enlisted in the military because of my books. Some of them have told me so. They've joined various branches of the military over the last 20 years because of my shows. And I hope we see a resurgence of understanding of what we are fighting for. You could say a war on terror, that would be partially correct, but it's not really what it is. They have been conducting a jihad against our way of life for 2,000 some odd years. It's just caught up with us now. Thanks for listening. May God save America.